What is good, Mexit planners? Recently, I had an opportunity to visit a bank and test out what it's like to bank here in Mexico. You know, if you've watched any of my previous videos, that I'm a huge proponent of Wise or TransferWise, the service formerly known as TransferWise. I'm a huge proponent of TransferWise and also the use of the RappiPay service. Well, recently I've been having some challenges with RappiPay, and so I thought it would be a good time to finally go ahead and to open a bank account. Stay tuned and I'll tell you about that process and how it went. Let's go. Thank you to my returning subscribers. If you are new to this channel, know that this is the place to get your expat questions answered. It's all about living in Mexico, how to move to Mexico, all of those things. We have answers right here. Subscribe. All right, so today I'm gonna tell you about what the process was like opening a bank account here in Mexico. Now stay to the end because I'll tell you about a plot twist that happened that I thought was a pretty unbelievable and quite frankly unnecessary. So we got completely moved out of our old house here and did the final walkthrough with my landlord, and she gave me a check. If you haven't seen the video of that property, it was absolutely stunning. It was a great place, and I'll link to the video above, but everything went well. We got a check for the deposit and I needed to visit their bank in order to cash that check. So upon going to the bank, I knew I should take a couple of things. Anytime here, I found that you're dealing with money, not only do you need your resident card, but you also need your passport as a foreign national. And so, yes, I am a permanent resident here in Mexico, but for some reason, you always need your passport. It's the same situation when you, say, visit a casino. If you want to get a casino card or what have you, you need your passport. So I know from that experience and also from exchanging money at the money exchange services or places here within Merida, Mexico, that I was going to need my passport. So I took it with me to the bank along with my resident card and the check. Now, one of the things that was a little unique when I got to the bank, you know, I went up to the teller, I told her what I needed in Spanish, of course, and she asked me for my passport, my residency card, but on the back of the check, in order to sign it, it's not just a simple signature as it would be in the United States. I actually needed to not only sign my name, well, I needed to print my name, I needed to put my address, I needed to also put my cell phone number as well as my signature on the back of the checks. Now, once they cashed the check, she, you know, put in all the information, made copies of my passport, made copies of my residency card, and simply handed me, you know, the stack of money, which I thought was interesting. They didn't bother to count it out or any of those things. So that was a little different as well from the States. But when I went in to the bank, you have to kind of tell them why you're there. And I told her not only did I want to cash a check, but I also wanted to inquire about opening an account. So my first visit, I was able to cash the check, and then I had a secondary appointment to speak with someone about opening an account. Now, when I went to speak to the gentleman about opening an account, I had my passport and I had my residency card, but he also indicated that in addition to those two pieces of ID, I also needed a copy of my CFE bill, which is the power company here, the electric utility here in Merida, Mexico. Now, as luck would have it, I actually had a physical paper copy because I asked him if I could use, you know, show him the app and use the electronic copy, and he said no. But I actually had a physical paper copy of the CFE bill because it had come in a day or two prior to me going down to the bank. So I knew that I could easily go home, get that, and as an additional form of identification, because here in Mexico, when you rent a place, you're not on the utilities. The utilities are going to always be in the landlord's name or the property owner's name until you actually purchase the property. And so I knew that, you know, it might make sense for me to also take the fully executed copy of my lease, which is notarized by the lawyer or the attorneys that you use at the closing. If you haven't watched any of my videos about long-term rental, take a look at the link above. I'll link to the videos about what that process is like, but it's almost like closing a house in that you go to an attorney or the attorney comes to you and you sign all the legal documents. They then go back and certify all of those documents with notary seals on every page. So I had the notarized copy of my lease with me when I went back to the bank. I absolutely love the TransferWise or Wise service and the Rappi solution, but because I've had some issues lately with the Wise solution and because I was in the bank already, I thought it would be a great opportunity to go ahead and open a checking account. And so to start, I'm opening this account for a couple of reasons. One, I want to be able to start to establish Mexican credit. And then two, by the way, which they told me could happen in as little as 6 months with, a balance in my account of, I think he said at least 30,000 pesos. So I'm excited about that. We'll see if that actually happens in 6 months. And then the number two reason for opening an account was just so that I don't run into any issues with, trying to transfer money in, get money out of ATM, all of those things. I can have money here in a domestic account that I can use to pay people with a clave or to pay my bills or whatever, right? And so that was the second reason for opening an account. I wanted to be less depending on the RappiPay service because I've run into some challenges with just getting support and what have you with RappiPay. All right, so I make an appointment and I return back to the bank for my appointment with my CFE bill, my notarized version of my lease contract, as well as my permanent resident card and my passport. So I have all of my documentation that I think I need for this process to open an account. And so I go and visit this bank. Now, the bank that I went to is one that is a subsidiary of a North America bank, a bank that's in the United States. So that bank is the parent company and they have a Mexican version of that bank here. So I went to that bank, sat down with the gentleman that was gonna, process the bank application, and there were some definite differences in this application. For instance, not only did they need, my forms of ID, my permanent resident visa, but also my passport. But at one point they filled out a W-9, which is the tax form used for the United States. And so they needed my social security number in order to fill out the W-9. The interesting part about that, when I read through the application process for opening an account, is that they will report your interest income earned for the or to the IRS. So that's very, very important to know when you go to file your taxes, that you're going to get an interest statement like you would with any bank here in the US, or like you would get with any bank in the United States. You're going to get an interest statement for any interest earned in Mexico, also reported to the IRS in the United States for when you file your taxes the following year. The other thing that was interesting was, along the lines of, I guess Mexico really clamped down on financial situations here in Mexico back in January. So a lot of things changed. A good example is even with Rappi, and the reason that I'm going through some issues is that Rappi now needs to verify that you have an INE or an INF, which are voter registration cards, and those are only available to citizens. So a resident, permanent or temporary, will not have an INE or INF card. So people that have been trying to get RappiPay cards since the beginning of January haven't been able to. And my account is actually stuck in limbo because it asked me to apply for a RappiPay credit card, which is like their black card. And when I got through the full process, it asked me for an INE or INF. Well, I don't have one of those. And so it's just stuck in a loop and I can't get them to kick it out of that loop so I can get back to using my RappiPay card the way I have. So that is another reason that I am sitting in this bank trying to open this account, because I want to be able to, not have to rely on RappiPay as much. Now, I've been using my TransferWise card, which has worked out great. But as you know, there are monthly spending limits on TransferWise, on Wise. There are monthly spending limits on Wise, as well as just daily limits and such as to what you can withdraw or use your card for. But the number one reason I wanted to open a bank account here in Mexico is so that I could start to build Mexican credit, because coming from the United States with a great credit score and excellent credit in the US does not mean you will have good credit and good credit score in Mexico. In fact, it's just the opposite. You have no credit. It's like starting all over again. And so in order to have a Mexican credit rating, one of the ways to do that is to open a bank account, show deposits, wait for some time, and then get a credit card issued through the bank. So that was my primary reason for opening a Mexican bank account. And I talked about that in my TransferWise Rappi videos a while ago. If you haven't seen those videos, take a look at the link above and I'll link to those. But TransferWise is still a very good solution for moving money from your American US bank account to the TransferWise service, which is not a bank, or Wise, I should say Wise. Every time I say TransferWise, I'm actually talking about the Wise application. So they changed their name recently. But the Wise application is a really, really good service for transferring money from the US to your Wise app. And Wise is not a bank. It's a holding service that will allow you to convert money into many different currencies. So you can hold money in dollars, you can hold money in pesos, and then when you're ready, you can, convert those dollars to pesos at a favorable rate, and then use your Wise card to spend those pesos or withdraw money from the ATM. That has worked out perfectly for me for the last 2 years, and I really haven't needed anything else other than the RappiPay solution, which was also a good scenario. But because of the issues and the difficulty I'm having with RappiPay and the customer service, I thought that it would be wise. Get the joke? I thought it would be wise to have a Mexican bank account as well. So not only do I have my Wise account, which is an app on my phone, but I also have I'm trying to get a Mexican bank account. So the Mexican bank account, they needed, all those forms of ID. They also needed to know where I worked. Well, I'm a business owner. I own a marketing company, and that is how I get my income. And so, along with that, I had to tell them the name of the corporation, the website, and additional information about the business, where it's registered in, and all those things. Not unusual, but again, here in Mexico, I guess they're trying to combat money laundering or make sure that the money and the income is verifiable. And so they needed to know additional information about that. The other part that I thought was interesting, so it only took 4,000 pesos to open this particular account. And I asked when I got there, hey, can I add my wife to this account? And I was told no, because this type of account as a foreign national, Estado Unidense, that you cannot have an account that's open with a passport. You can't have multiple people on that account, only one person. And so my wife would have to go in and go through this exact same process on her own in order to have a completely separate account. So I thought that was interesting. If you're using a passport and opening an account at this particular bank, you could only have one person on the account. So I could name my wife as the beneficiary, and this is where it got really interesting. As I'm reading through the application that the young man asked me and typed up, he missed the fact that I was married, or didn't put it in there. He said it didn't matter. Well, I thought it was pretty important, because there's also a beneficiary section, and there's a section that asks if there are any economic dependents on you. Well, my daughter, who is a minor, is an economic dependent and a permanent resident. And so I needed him to go in and make that change to put her down. And since we made that change, I also had him change, the fact that I was married. But one of the things that I found that was interesting was not only are the options, are you single, married, but also, do you have a concubine? Yes, a concubine. And so I was like, hey, is that a very common thing here in Mexico for folks to have concubines? And the guy said, absolutely. There are lots of folks that live here with concubines. Now, let me explain. Concubines here in Mexico basically means domestic partners and or civil marriages, basically. It's almost like what we had in the States, where, you're not technically married, you're not legally married, but you've lived together for X number of years. Here in Mexico, that is 5 years. If two people that are single, keyword, two single people live together, then for 5 years, then they can be considered domestic partners. And if one of those people pass away, then the other person has claims to the estate, to life insurance, to things of that nature. Also, if those two single people that are living together for 5 years have a kid, that kid has claims to the estate of the person that is deceased. So that is a legal status here in Mexico. I thought it was interesting that they would use concubine as the word for that legal status instead of something like common law marriage, which is what we call it in the United States. But that was a big difference that I saw in the application was I had to declare whether I was single, married, or had a concubine. So interesting, just differences, right? Nothing weird, but just a difference in terminology that, from what you would expect in the United States. So I went in there, I spent, the better part of an hour going through this application. They even they opened the account and they gave me a debit card that doesn't have my name. He said, I can give you a debit card today that doesn't have your name on it. Here in Mexico, you don't necessarily require a debit card with your name, but if you go to use it like in the US, they might want your name on the debit card. But here you can simply use the card, the chip, and the PIN, and you're totally fine. So they actually handed me the same day I opened the account, they handed me a debit card with my, to my account. So that can all be activated. They also gave me the information to activate the application. So we spend the better part of an hour. They give me the debit card. They open the account. And the plot twist is this. He says, you can't actually deposit any money into this account today because we need to come by and verify your address or verify that you actually live where you say you live. I said, well, that's no problem. I actually have my lease agreement here that's notarized with all of the seals from the state notary, which is an attorney here in Merida or in the Yucatan. So the notaries here are the actual attorneys that are appointed by the state. So they're an estate official. So I actually had my notarized copy of the contract with me so that we can verify that, yes, the owner of the place is X, and I have a contract saying that I'm leasing this place from X, that I'm supposed to be there. Well, that wasn't good enough. In fact, he told me that they couldn't even use my lease agreement for anything in their system. Their system didn't allow for them to use my lease agreement. I said, well, wouldn't it be, couldn't we just get a manager to come in and to look at this lease agreement, read it, and verify that I live there so I can make this deposit and actually give you money to fund this account? And he says, no. What they have to do, this is the plot twist, what they have to do is to come out to my house sometime in the next week or two, believe that, and ask to see if I'm the person that lives there. If I'm not there, they're gonna ask my neighbors, hey, does someone live in this house? So they're gonna physically come out to the house, take pictures of the place, of the wall, because you can't actually see my house. You see the wall around it and the electric fence. But they're gonna come to the address and to verify that someone on this street or someone in the area knows that I live there. So I have an account that's open. It's not funded with any money. I actually have a debit card that won't do anything right now because there's no money in this account. But technically I have a bank account open with the bank that I went to. So an hour later, we were able to get this bank account open, but it's not funded. And the crazy thing is, once they verify that I live here, right, which I'm sure they're probably just gonna come by, ring the doorbell, and if they do, it'll ring to my phone. But and I'll tell them, yeah, I live there, and hopefully that'll be that. The person at the bank is going to call me, tell me that they verified my account, and then I'm going to go in and actually have to make a deposit in cash at the window. So that is the end of the story. That is the process here in Mexico. And I asked him, I said, why is it that you need to come out and verify that I live at this address? And he says, well, it's a totally random process. Random, right? Not sure I believe that. Happens to Mexicans as well as to, residents, but anybody can be selected. They'll come out and verify your address. Again, not sure I believe that, but that's what I was told. So if you go into the bank and you try to open an account and they tell you that they need to come by and verify your address, well, there you have it. It's happened to me as well. It's no big deal. I'm in no big rush to get an account open. So I was really doing this for the experience. I actually plan to go to another bank maybe next week and just to see if their process is exactly the same. but I thought this was an interesting story to tell, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this video, do me a favor, leave me thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell. I appreciate everybody for your time and your attention. Thank you for watching. Until next time, MexitPlans Monty, I'm out.